So there's a well-known saying in the Caribbean that promise is a comfort to a fool. So last week this time, Secretary of State Marco Rubio was in the Caribbean. He was in Jamaica, in Guyana, and in Trinidad and Tobago. On his trip to the Caribbean island, meeting with the CARICOM heads of government, Marco Rubio assured the CARICOM leaders that, look, the Make America Great Again will benefit the Caribbean in a big way. In his speech in Jamaica, Marco Rubio spoke about deindustrialization of America and all the manufacturing jobs moving to places like China, and the Trump administration, their agenda and getting back manufacturing in North America. In that speech, Marco Rubio said to the Prime Minister of Jamaica that, look, Jamaica could be a main beneficiary of jobs coming back to North America. And 1 week later, the Trump administration, with just the stroke of a pen, and the Caribbean is about to be crushed. So yesterday, Donald Trump announced a 10% tariff on all the Caribbean islands that are part of the CBI program, the Caribbean Basin Initiative. And that program has been around from 1983, as you heard me said yesterday. That program was implemented by President Reagan at the time. And that program was pretty much a bit of a compromise, I would say, because back in 1983, we saw a lot of the same jobs, the same deindustrialization of America. We saw a lot of the jobs moving out of the Caribbean. I mentioned several times about the free zone in Jamaica. They're also manufacturing in other Caribbean islands like Trinidad and Tobago that was manufacturing for America. Those jobs moved to China back in the 80s. So a part of what President Reagan did at the time was, with the Caribbean community, they came together and they put this program together, which saw billions of dollars from 22 Caribbean islands that would go into America, and they enjoy like duty-free privilege going into America. Now, all of that is gone with Donald Trump 10% tariff. So what does this mean for the Caribbean? Let's talk about it. Okay, so the two main things that I was concerned about yesterday, going into yesterday evening, the evening that Donald Trump called Liberation Day, and that was the 25% tariff on ships coming from China into the Caribbean, and about the Caribbean Basin Initiative. So the Caribbean Basin Initiative, that is pretty much destroyed with Donald Trump 10% tariff on exports coming out of the Caribbean. And this is going to be very devastating for the Caribbean, especially like Jamaica, places like Dominican Republic, like Trinidad and Tobago. And this CBI program, the Caribbean Basin Initiative, what it did, as I mentioned yesterday, it allowed over 22 Caribbean islands to export goods into America. And most of those goods were duty-free. Most of those goods were tariff-free. And what this is going to do now is going to make all of those goods going into America extremely expensive. Whenever you go into places like Miami and you go to New York and you go to the Caribbean supermarket in those areas in America, and most of the Caribbean products are expensive compared to other products based on the size of the region. We can't compete with like Mexico. We can't compete with Honduras in terms of production. And so what that program did was pretty much level the playing field for a small Caribbean nation that we could have our goods going into America. What this is going to do now, when Caribbean nationals, if you're Jamaican, if you're Guyanese, if you're Trini, if you're Vinci and you're living in America now and you go to the Caribbean supermarket, you're going to be thinking twice now about taking up products from the Caribbean because the prices are going to just skyrocket. And this could have a devastating impact on the Caribbean in terms of jobs in the Caribbean, in terms of like farming in the Caribbean and export. We know that the Caribbean depend on export for foreign exchange. And in the latest numbers, the numbers that I saw was 2023 that the Caribbean export to America, it was $40 million, $40 billion export to America, and import into the Caribbean was $49 billion. So we were running the entire region. Trade with the USA was running a trade deficit of about $9 billion. So it is going to be very interesting to see the numbers going forward, what impact this is going to have on the Caribbean. And the Caribbean is already struggling as is. So this, I don't know what is going to happen to the Caribbean region, because now we're looking at least a 35% increase on goods and services, because the 25% tariff, in terms of that, is going to impact things that are coming from China. That is going to have an immediate impact on people going shopping in Jamaica for household products. I know we don't get a lot of food from China in terms of things that we see on the supermarket shelf, but everything that we use in our household in the Caribbean comes from China, and that is going to have a big negative impact right away in the Caribbean. And as I said, the 10% that the Caribbean, the region is going to have to pay for tariff. I know that the consumers on the other side in America will pay for it, but what this could do is lead to a reduction of goods, that the demands for goods coming out of the Caribbean, and that will further lead to job loss in the Caribbean. So this is going to be a crazy time for the Caribbean. And talking about trends in the Caribbean on a daily basis, putting out content every day, I have the privilege to communicate with a lot of people in the Caribbean, and I've been sensing a lot of frustration from people in the Caribbean about CARICOM. And for most people in the Caribbean, CARICOM just seemed to be like a symbolic figure, like it's just there, but it's not effective. And I believe that this is the time that the Caribbean leaders, they're going to have to come together and do something right away, because Caribbean people, Caribbean nationals are running very, very weary of this old CARICOM thing, because it doesn't seem to be effective. Because CARICOM, it is mind-blowing to me that in 2025 that we are not able to feed ourselves in the Caribbean. That is the basic responsibility of any government. And the fact that we have a body like CARICOM, where the CARICOM heads of government meet on a yearly basis, and we are still at ground zero in terms of feeding our people in the Caribbean, that is just mind-boggling to me. And as I said in a previous video, I have been traveling the Caribbean. I was in Barbados, I was in St. Vincent last year, just came back from Jamaica. And one of the things that I do in my research, I go around and I go to all the supermarkets, and I go to the local markets. And it is very disheartening that, as I said, like 70%, my estimation, up to 70% of products on the supermarket shelf in the Caribbean, they're not from the region. And we're going to have to do something about this. And I believe that CARICOM is just going to have to step up and do something, be more effective. One of the things I've realized with CARICOM, like the model that they're using now, where we see like one prime minister every year takes the helm of CARICOM, and I don't think that is an effective strategy. My personal belief, I believe that CARICOM should have a president for CARICOM. Like they should vote in one person, a president, a vice president, an entire board, that the main focus, their only focus, is just dealing with CARICOM issues. I don't believe that it is an effective strategy. Like, for example, the Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley, she's the head of CARICOM. I don't believe it's possible for Mia Mottley to have the best interests of the people in Barbados on a daily basis while juggling CARICOM at the same time. Dickon Mitchell was the previous head of CARICOM. I don't think that's an effective strategy, because you're asking one leader to focus on the people of your island, and then at the same time focus on the region. And I just believe that it is going to be more effective if they vote in a president for CARICOM and that we can fast track, because there's no reason why the Caribbean should not be feeding its own people. We have one of the most fertile ground anywhere in the world, and the Caribbean, in my estimation, is the most expensive region in the world. When you talk to people from Asia, like I have a good friend that just came back from the Philippines, and all he had to worry about was his plane ticket. He could go to the Philippines with $1,000 and floss for a month, But I just came back from Jamaica, and as soon as I got off the plane, $1,000 was gone. So, and Africa is much cheaper. The region, the continent, much cheaper than what we see in CARICOM. And I think the main reason is that the difference between the CARICOM Caribbean region is that we're not producing. So I hope that the Caribbean, someone from the CARICOM heads of government, they're watching what is going on and that they can fast track whatever they need to do to start farming, to start manufacturing in the Caribbean, because we have to be able to feed our own people. So guys, sound off in the comment section and let me know your thoughts on this. What do you think is going to happen in the Caribbean region because of this Trump administration, the 10% tariff, and also the tariff on ships coming out of China? Leave your comment in the comment section, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing content. And remember, peace. I'm out.